All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here on this webinar with us today. My name is Kim Elena Ionescu. I am the Chief Sustainability and Knowledge Development Officer for the Specialty Coffee Association. And for the past year or so, I've been working with the team of SCA staff and board of directors, members, and a few other notable nonprofit organization representatives on the SCA's Price Crisis Response Initiative. And over the course of this past year, we've had a number of webinars, starting, I think, in January or February, raising awareness and bringing in different perspectives on how this crisis is playing out and who's being affected and how it's affecting different organizations and producers and being felt in different parts of the world. And most of those webinars that we have done have focused on, as I just said, how the crisis is being experienced, and more than anything by coffee producers and producer organizations. But it's important for all of us to recognize, who are part of the coffee community and in specialty coffee, that we all have roles to play in this, and that this year we've learned a lot and we've shared a lot of perspective, but we knew that we also wanted to hear from people who are maybe not experiencing this crisis directly and looking for ways to engage and ways to learn more and to be more involved. So we've invited representatives from the guilds of the SCA who are, been foundational to who we are and how we reach out into communities, to come and speak to some of the impacts and share perspectives and ideas on this webinar here today. So if you're looking for more background on the price crisis, then I encourage you to go to the SCA's website. We have a page on the price crisis, sca.coffee/price crisis. Also, those other webinars can be accessed from the SCA or the scanews.coffee website. So without further ado, I'll pass the microphone over to Yannis Apostolopoulos and our other panelists, and then I'll fade into the background here. But if you've got questions at any point, then I'll try to be available to answer those. And once again, thank you all for being here on the line. Thank you to all of our panelists and organizers.
Thank you, Kim Elena. My name is Yannis Apostolopoulos. Just keep Yannis. Nobody can say my last name. And I'm the CEO of Specialty Coffee Association. And I'm really honored to be here today. And thank you all for your time, because it's for us really important to hear how price crisis affects and what does that mean to our guilds. So I'd like to start with a question like exactly on that topic. So I'd like to ask our panelists, and starting with Sonia Grant, can you tell me a bit about your understanding of price crisis and what it means to the constituent of Roasters Guild?
Yeah, hello everybody, and thank you, Yannis. I'm really honored to be in this webinar and talking about this broad and huge topic that is so concerning all of us. And in our roasting community, it's kind of it's affecting us in a different aspect, of course. But I would say that every members of our community would like to pay higher prices to the farmers to help out with the specialty value chain. And so all the members of the value chain would be equally respected and having like the same opportunities of making a living, because in the end of the day, this is a business. And so it is amazing that maybe not amazing is like a good word, but it's in our roasting community that there are now movements that everybody are getting a little bit more sharing informations and trying to respect all the members of the specialty coffee. So, and I think like in all our community, it's there is everybody are inspired. They are really trying to work global but act local. So I think yeah, members of our roasting community have been having yeah, different point of view of the price crisis. But I think like in the end of the day, having webinars like this, we are just starting to share those informations that we can do our best to help out. I don't know if that answered the question, but you know.
Thank you, Sonia. And can I address the same question to Stuart, because that's a different perspective. You communicate with consumers and customers. So what does this price crisis mean to the Barista Guild constituent?
Hi, yeah, just to give a quick introduction to who I am. I'm Stuart Ritson, the current chair of the Barista Guild. In 3 months' time, I'll be stepping back, but still part of the guild. And I've been working in coffee for the last 8 or 9 years now, in barista roles, in a roastery, and now in green coffee as well. But to answer the question, it's a really important one. I think, to be honest, the whole situation is troubling for the whole industry, but especially for baristas and for the constituents we work with in the Barista Guild. I think a lot of what drives us to work in coffee is a passion for quality and a passion for coffee itself, and not necessarily the money. And I know when I started out in coffee, I made a minimum wage, and that's a pretty normal reality for a lot of people. Nowadays, there's a lot of improving wages for baristas, but it is disheartening to hear that like baristas, producers are also struggling a lot, and I think our constituents really care about that, and it resonates a lot. For me, I think that possibly the most troubling part is the kind of cloud it casts over the whole industry. Often baristas today might be interested in owning their own cafe, or maybe learning about roasting or becoming technicians or something else, maybe just staying being baristas. But if the future doesn't look so bright for the whole industry, it's a lot less compelling to think of coffee as a career. And ultimately, the Barista Guild is all about making this profession recognized as such a profession. And if the industry itself is built in an unsustainable way, that's unsustainable for all of us, which I think affects baristas, and I think the price crisis means a lot to the community.
Thank you, Stuart. I would like to address exactly the same question to Hylan, to understand what is the understanding of the price crisis and what does it mean to the Coffee Technicians Guild.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hylan Joseph. I am the current chair of the Coffee Technicians Guild. I've been in coffee for about 35 years, and honestly, my first true passion is being a barista. The understanding of the price guild, the price crisis on our end is really, it is a commodity issue with the future prices, and that translates into, speaking to what Stuart says, cost of living issue, quality of life. I've told this story several times in the past few months where I was on a service call in a coffee shop and I was talking to a barista about it, and he posed a question: if coffee prices are so low, why are coffee drinks getting so expensive? Why are rents getting so expensive? Why is there not equitable wages? For the Guild, we are not a component of the supply chain. We are here to act as an agent to keep the supply chains running. So there's not much effect that it has on us right now. What we need to do as a Coffee Technicians Guild is work to educate our constituents and our customers and our vendors at that level to let them know what's going on so they can support the movement.
Thank you, Hylan. So based on what you were saying, I'd like to ask Stuart, like, what is the one thing that the price crisis is impacting your members already? Like, are there things that you're most worried about the future? Like, what do you think?
Oh, Stuart, sorry.
I think,
No, Stuart, sorry.
Yeah, actually, Hylan's story is probably the one thing that's already affecting baristas already. It's this communication element. It's a great thing that this issue is attracting a lot of attention, but obviously it's a very complicated issue. The coffee supply chain is very long. It involves a lot of different people, and baristas are kind of being asked by their customers, what are you doing about it, or how can I understand this better? To be honest, when I was starting out in coffee, I probably wouldn't have been able to answer this question. It's still really difficult. The question posed to that barista in Hylan's story is one that's incredibly hard to answer. And I think that is, in a small way, that's affecting baristas. It's asking something new of them, which is exciting and important. And I think this communication element is a great opportunity. You are pretty unlikely day to day as a normal coffee consumer to meet the person who roasts your coffee often, or ever maybe. And the same, you might never meet the person who's keeping that equipment that makes your coffee in good condition, but you'll probably meet the barista maybe every day, maybe it's a different barista every day, but regardless, you're meeting those people, and as such, they're kind of like, the barista is the front line for the industry, and so the pressure is on them, but also the opportunity is there for them to be able to communicate this issue better and get across what maybe their individual cafe or the roaster they work for or the bigger company they work for is trying to do to address this problem.
Okay, so based on that and based on what Hylan said before, that the technicians are not part of the trading of coffee and do not have a direct input on that value chain, I'd like to ask Hylan, do you see something that is impacting your constituent, and that is there something that you're worried about in the future?
Like you said, service is a support mechanism for the coffee supply chain. Tomorrow, this won't have an impact on us, but there is worries about the future. For those people who've been around for a while, we saw the price of coffee go to $2-3 a pound a few years back. And the concern is that demand will outpace supply because producers are scaling back. And when that happens, that affects budgets. And those budgets go down to the staffing level. And for my industry, it goes down to the equipment purchasing level and the service level, because that's the easiest place to cut first. And I mean, the big concern that we're watching right now, we're watching it closely, is in the next year to 18 months, will we start seeing the price start rising exponentially, even geometrically, because we're starting to see the producers are starting to scale back on their production.
So, Sonia, having heard those two views, I know that roasters are the ones that are currently have the biggest impact in that trading value chain. What do you think is the impact currently in your constituent, and do you share the same worries like Hylan for the future and Stuart?
Yeah, of course. I believe the biggest worry, like now within the roasting community, is the connection and the trust that is they have been developing between the farmers and the roasteries, because it's all about making trust to get help with higher quality, for example. And I think most roasteries are and in the roasting community are worried about losing those connections, and also with not having access to the same quality as before, because of the farmers are adapting to the market, and so it could happen that they would not have a healthy development towards to the infrastructure. and the environment, because these are all aspects that the farmers have to think about. So they have to change things at the farms, and this will always affect most of the time the quality and the access to those coffees. I think micro roasteries are they have I think, because I'm in that situation, I'm a micro roaster, that there are different worries that are already affecting micro roasters. But it's all about this relationship and the communications. So I think basically we are worried that this will have like a long-term problems and will not be easy to fix, but it all comes down to this having the quality of the relationship and the communications. I think all roasters are trying to change those and share and be transparent about their buying as well.
And do you feel that we might actually see farmers moving away from coffee production and actually start losing that plurality that specialty coffee is offering as an experience today to all of us?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in the situation. I forgot to introduce myself, but I'm Sonia and I'm from Iceland. I'm like Stuart and Hylan. I'm also a barista and a micro roaster, but and with a business, you know. So I have a different kind of hats. So from the different point of view, like in Iceland, we have I'm buying from a farmer, and she's from Honduras, but she lives in Iceland. So I have this discussion like every day, and she is representing community in Honduras. So I have like her stories, and she is like explaining like farmers are just closing their farms and moving to the city, you know, because the second generation is not ready to take over. The third generation might do, but the second generation is leaving. So what happens to the farm? We don't know. And this is like a huge worry because of there is a relationship between the farmers and the roaster. So, and nobody wants to lose those relationships, you know, it's like marriage. And I have to say, like this sentence that she told me, this lady, she said that nobody wants to leave their farm, you know, nobody wants to leave their mountain or the farm. And this sentence has stuck to my heart, because this is it, you know, we all want to have, we all want to be respected and being paid for our hard work. And that goes with everybody in our specialty coffee value chain. Sorry, I'm a little bit like, you know, when I start talking, you know, I can talk forever. So.
No, I think this is really important. Stuart, do you share that feelings with Sonia? Like, what is the feedback that you are getting? Like,
yeah, I mean, I've been pretty privileged personally to spend a lot more time meeting producers in the last few years, and definitely. Yeah, there's like deep, like I kind of said in my first answer, there's deep worries about the lack of sustainability economically of the whole industry. You know, the foundations of sustainability are economic, environmental, and then I forget the third one. but you know, economic is always the first. You know, you can't ask people to produce coffee in a greener, more ecological way if they're not being paid. You can't ask them to do more for their communities. You can't, you know, so the fact that there's an issue with payments and money right at the beginning, I think it runs through the whole industry. Yeah, it's definitely something that I think baristas are. I think it's great in a way now that this information is being shared. I think 5 years ago, maybe definitely 10 years ago, the average barista in a shop might not even know what's in their blend, even if they're buying from a local roaster. Now, the understanding of what's going on and the supply chain is a lot better. But nonetheless, there's still a lot more education that could be provided. So it's interesting, I think, and I think that's maybe for baristas as well, the other troubling thing is seeing where we can go from here. It's like this communication piece is super important. It's really important that we understand the whole issue, but there's also an element where often a lot of barista constituents, they're kind of like, they get up early in the morning and they get to work and they produce something all day long and work directly with people. So a lot of baristas, they want to do, they want to do something. And sometimes this issue can feel so big that it's like, well, what can we do? What can an individual barista do to change the situation? And that we need to tackle that issue. We need to empower the community and find ways that every single person can make a difference or acknowledge where they are making a difference already.
So based on what you're saying, like Hylan, a crisis is a chance for groups to come together. How might the guilds lead the way in collaborating across the value chain? Like, what do you feel? Do you feel there's something there?
Let me speak to this at two levels. The first is kind of addressing what Stuart says is, where do you go when you're a barista and there's not enough work there? You can't support your system. Right now, our industry, the service industry, is on an uphill curve. We've got double-digit growth for the next probably 3 or 4 years, and that's techs who can work on specialty coffee equipment, brewers who understand gold standards. The problem with that uphill curve is our hiring curve is on a downhill curve. So as we start to grow, we have less and less and less resources to actually fill the service needs that are out there. So what I've always seen with the internal guilds is developing a partnership where when you're a barista, and again, part of the reason our guild was founded because I was actually a barista and I love coffee. We're all passionate about coffee. That's what brings us here. I was a barista at a certain point in time. That will only take you so far. You want to have a family, you want to have a house, you want to do something. So a big chunk of the guilds, Roasters Guild and our guild, is to say, there's something else here for you guys. Let's offer education for you so you can see what else is in the coffee industry. Our industry is huge, and there's a ton of opportunities for baristas who are passionate about what we do to say, well, I'm going to look at being a roaster. I want to do that. Or I'm going to look at being a coffee technician. Or I want to go from being a barista to a manager. How can the Barista Guild get me there? We have that opportunity to go to our constituents and say, we can help you grow in this industry. That's one of the beauties of the SCA. I've been involved with the SCA for 20 years, and I started with the Barista Guild. And through the Barista Guild, I met people that got me into the service industry. And I think that's where we're really going to be able to support the Price Crisis Initiative at the constituent level and let them know that there is a support network to try to get them to the next stage, job-wise and education-wise. With the Guild for right now, all we can really do is partner with the Roasters Guild and the Barista Guild and do our best to educate our customers and our vendors and say, look, this is what we're seeing, this is what's out there. That's not much more we can do right now.
Mm-hmm.
I see that. Do you share the same view, Stuart? There was a lot of focus on baristas from Hylan. Yeah.
No, I think it's true. I think that all the guilds already feed into each other in really positive ways, not just in the sense that baristas might become roasters or technicians, but also technicians might become roasters and roasters might be baristas. They're a lot more interconnected than maybe people realize, and I've had the pleasure to see that firsthand running events, running Collab and Bloom at our camps, but also attending Roaster Camp and seeing friends who are baristas there and who might have been sent by an employer so that they can grow and tackle new things. So there is a great interconnectedness of the guilds already, and I think it's something that could be solidified and built upon. And I totally agree that the education piece is probably the easiest part. Sharing information between the guilds, explaining how we work together and explaining where, say, Roaster Guild comes up with this great idea that is addressing the coffee price crisis directly, and how baristas can help them, or vice versa. I think that's the most obvious part, the education, and then sharing it in goals and tangible things. What those will be, that's kind of the harder part. Yeah, I think anything that brings us together in a unified goal is positive, and I think this is the big thing for the industry right now, and I see the guilds coming together around this.
Yeah, Sonia, let me change the question a bit. So,
okay.
First of all, I want to say that all of us in this webinar are feeling a bit nervous, and being asked to talk about this subject, it's really hard. And I'd like to understand, like, why is it hard? Is it because there are expectations out there that we're gonna figure out solutions? We're not the experts, but we're trying to do our best. So why is it hard to talk about this subject? Like, what is the challenge? What are the challenges here?
I think the challenges are because we don't have the answer, and it's like it's affecting people in our community, affecting our farmers, and so I think it's very hard to talk about this because we are it's the human factor, It's like we are always talking about passion and being inspired by each other, and like that's what the guilds are trying with our members. And it's hard to talk about price crisis because we don't see the solution at this point, because it's connected to the environment, it's connected to sustainability, so it's kind of connected to like so many aspects, and it all comes down to that we share information, be more transparent. And so I think that's why it's so difficult to talk about it. It's difficult to choose one path because we are not just, we are not fixing like a broken arm or something, it's so much bigger and has like different aspects, but it's about, our value chain and supply chain.
Agree.
Yeah.
Stuart, from your side, like, why do you find it hard to talk about the subject?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point that it's hard because tackling, yes, sometimes you want to find direct answers, and there might not be one, or even multiples. So sometimes it's easier to stay quiet than to just say something and feel like you're not progressing. I think it's difficult as well because it can sometimes feel a little bit like an ivory tower thing where, we're here saying, oh, it's so bad for someone else somewhere else. It feels too distant and it feels impersonal in a way. It's a really important thing to make sure that we don't stereotype and we don't see the crisis through our own lens and how we want to see it. And I think most people in the industry, regardless of whether you're a barista or you're a roaster or whatever, probably has not met many producers, maybe any ever. And even if you've had the benefit or you've spent the money to go to a producing country, you may well have only met people very briefly. And so it feels strange to speak upon their behalf. And that also can make this topic difficult. So yeah, I think the world we live in as well is a place where it's easy to worry about saying the wrong thing and to try and say nothing instead. So all of these things kind of make it a tough topic.
I believe also that I want to hear also what Skyline's view is, that everybody on specialty coffee or people that they're close to specialty coffee share the same values, because specialty coffee is not just the better coffee. It's like what makes coffee better, and that's what we're trying to do. and we want to we want to try to have an impact to the livelihoods of many. And I think being on this situation after all these years of the specialty coffee movement makes us feel a bit more awkward. Like, Alan, what do you think?
It's a difficult place to be. It's a difficult place to be for us as leaders. I think that ultimately what's sitting at the back of our minds is we want to help solve the problem tomorrow. And we want to make sure that the people that put us into this position to speak for them, we're here to help them, that we're here to support them. And it's hard because managers and leaders, the impetus is on us is to try and fix things, but the problem is so massive. What can we do right now to try and help everybody from the producers down to the baristas, to the store managers, to even the owners, where we can say, this is how we want to support you. And there's no easy answer. And that's probably the hardest. When we first started working on this and I did all the research on it, that's the hardest, the bitterest pill to swallow is I want to support our constituents at every level. I want to support everybody in coffee. I want to support the producers, but there's no one magic button you can push to say this is going to fix it all. So we have to make a decision. Where do we start? And we have started. We're educating people. We're giving people the knowledge that they need to go, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to go. But what's this next steps? How do we feel as leaders that we're addressing the people in specialty coffee and we're supporting them?
Okay.
So that's for me the perfect conduit to my last question here. And I'll address it to Stuart, because at SCA, as part of that ongoing work of the price crisis response, we started to learn more about the living income movement. There are already organizations and coalitions dedicated to pursue the living income for farmers in coffee. The topic of living income, of living wage, is related and has been important on discussions within the guilds, especially the Barista Guild. What are your first impressions of this movement and the work done in coffee so far?
Yeah, I feel really positive about this. I was able to see some of the work that is being done with the living wage movement at origin, and that was or in one particular producing country. And it was really interesting, and I think really helped clarify a lot for me. I think the whole movement is really important. Obviously, in the past 12 months, especially, you've seen a lot of these wage surveys in different cities in the US, in different countries in Europe, even further afield. People are picking up on this movement, and ultimately, those surveys are all about, how much are other people in the barista role or in other coffee roles receiving as remuneration? How much are they being paid? Because to be honest, most people don't know. And I've definitely seen in those reports, people probably doing a very similar level of work and earning twice as much. So I think those things are really interesting. And I think, like we've all addressed, that this education element is so important. We need to understand the situation so that we can move forward. And I think this is a big piece in it. In particular, I think, and this applies as well, like there's a situation where a cafe owner might say, hey, what's being paid for, what is the average wage for a barista in my community, and match that, or maybe even go higher and feel satisfied with themselves. But if that average is unlivable, then it doesn't matter. And actually, I think this living wage thing in producing countries is really important, because it takes the topic away from what's the cost of production, which has been a big point of like a conversation piece. But actually, if all we're doing is paying the cost of production, that's still no money for the producers. It's still unlivable. So to move beyond that and say, what would it take? How much money would you need to make as a producer in Colombia or Costa Rica or, in Kenya, wherever, and say, how much would you need to make to be able to put your kids through school or maintain your farm properly? You know, that's a much better question, I think, and a really positive step. So I'm really optimistic about what comes out of it and how people will be able to use that information to make hard, like, differences in how they buy their coffee or how they support the farmers they work with as roasters or cafes or whatever their position in the industry.
Yeah. So Sonia, yes, what Stuart was just saying is we're moving away from just cost of production to go to what is living income. And being on the roasting side, which roasters are key and are a key part of this value chain, has the most exposure to the value chain. How do you think a living income discussion will affect decision making in the roasters world when it comes to buying decisions? And what are your first impressions of that movement?
Yeah, I'm like Stuart. I'm really positive of what actually has already happened, and we see, like, in the coffee roasting community, that that transparency of the buying of the coffee and sharing it with their consumers, because, like, the consumer still doesn't understand why they have to pay this kind of price for the coffee. So that's the biggest problem for the roasteries, because they are doing wholesale and retail as well. But I think because of the movements and through all our events, for example, like the CRG retreat and the CRG camp and the summits, we have been sharing from one roaster to another experiences in their local communities, because I think, like, all this will start in the local communities and then spread around, sharing those informations and how it has affecting the roasters and the structure. So basically, I think it's positive because we are talking to each other, you know, and we are sharing information. So that's the positive point. And so I think we can always do better, but this is the start, and we already started.
Okay, Hylan, your view on this one, your first impressions?
I've cursorily read about it. I think it's a great thing. I think it is a fantastic way to get us back on track and support specialty coffee and support the producers, because that's where the supply chain starts. But the question that I have is how will this affect the whole supply chain? I mean, how will this go from happy producers to happy importers to happy roasters to happy baristas? So it's more looking at the whole system, but I think it's a fantastic start.
Yeah, I think we all want coffee to make us happy. So thank you all for that. I think we're 20 minutes before the top of the hour.
Okay.
And I would like to take a pause on me asking you questions and bringing Ellie to address questions that we had from our attendees on this webinar.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ellie Hudson. I'm one of the staff members at the SCA. You've seen me a little bit on the background of this webinar here. I work with Kim on the staff team dedicated to the Price Crisis Response Initiative, and also have over the years been really involved in the guilds. Apologies for my voice. I'm not sick. I have some seasonal allergies that cause me to lose my voice. Thank you so much, everyone, for the questions that are coming in. I see there's already a couple of hands raised. We have several questions submitted. So as I mentioned in the messaging, what I'm going to do is just take these questions. I'm going to identify you by first name with your question, and then we'll let the panelists choose who would like to respond. Some of them are comments, which wouldn't require a response. That's this first one here, which came in early on from Bill and Jen, who commented, "The barista is a perfect voice of frontline communication. hoping that the owners ease up on them in regards to efficiency. So I think what they mean is that the discussion at the point of transaction might be taking a little longer if consumers are asking baristas about the price crisis. So would any of the panelists like to respond to that? Maybe Stuart?
Yeah, I think it's it's a good point. I mean, if you stopped to talk through a complex situation like this with every consumer, it would probably undermine the very cafe you work in. However, it is the best opportunity to speak on a personal level with as many people as possible. You know, having the baristas know about this topic and be able to talk about it. I think there's kind of two things here. So the efficiency thing, it's like maybe if people changed their setups, maybe if they bought different equipment, their whole bar would be more efficient and they would have more labor time to spend, you know, effectively really doing just customer service and I don't like the phrase educating consumers, but talking to consumers about this topic is a form of customer service as well, you know. So if people have different setups, there might be less strain on the barista while being efficient enough to actually talk these things through. I think other things people have to, like cafe owners as well, can think creatively about how to discuss this topic and how to engage consumers. I recently saw a cafe where on the wall they put out the amount that a kilo of commodity grade coffee cost on the C market, and then below it the cost of a fair trade kilo of coffee on the commodity market, and below that the amount they had spent on the coffee they were buying that was in the hopper that day. And I mean, that's a really simple way of just addressing, like, you know, look here, it's like this small amount, then a bit bigger, and you know, this is the amount that we're spending a lot more. And in that way it sparks the conversation. The consumer can understand that straight away, and also helps address this thing that Sonja brought up, which is you know, and Hylan as well, that consumers often are confused why the price of coffee is coming down. Why is their specific cup of coffee cost so much? So I think, yeah, my comment to that is like, yes, we shouldn't make this a heavy burden for baristas. It's a topic for the whole industry, but there's also ways to make it possible to have these conversations in cafes. And I honestly think that is the best space to have these conversations with consumers.
Thank you so much. Our next question is for Sonia. This question came in from Ruth, who asks, can Sonia discuss how it is determined what price a specialty coffee roaster will pay directly to a farmer? Are micro roasters struggling to stay competitive with other roasters? So I'll read it one more time. Can Sonia discuss how it is determined what price a specialty coffee roaster will pay directly to a farmer? Are micro roasters struggling to stay competitive with other roasters?
Thank you very much, Ruth, for this question. It's a good one. If I answer first about the micro roasters, I think micro roasters are definitely struggling with the wholesale market in some local communities because of their size, I would say. The bigger roasteries are, of course, buying in like containers, but then you have micro roasters that are buying a little bit different, you know, maybe a pallet or so. And so there is always a little bit of differences in the prices that goes with, from the bean to the roastery. So I think like in all our communities, this has been like a huge topic because you want the business, but then the bigger companies and bigger roasteries, they are pressing down the prices of the coffee. So small micro roasteries cannot compete with that most of the time. That's like the simplest answer, I think, and has come up many times during our events when roasters are discussing this. About the other question, I don't know exactly how I can. I don't know if I understand the question 100%. If Ellie, could you explain it to me, maybe?
I think Kim is ready to chime in. Oh, and Stuart. Go ahead, Stuart.
Stuart.
I actually, I was, yeah, there's a bit of miscommunication. I was
it's for the next one. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay.
Great. We have a couple hands raised, so maybe we'll just move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. I think I saw Kevin had a hand raised earlier. So Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Then you can just speak to us and ask your question.
Oh my gosh, the pressure's on. I just wanted to, and I don't know all of you. I know Sonia, I know you. Honest, I don't believe we've met yet, but I run a consumer coffee event called CoffeeCon. And sustainability, we have been around since 2011, and we have a sustainability roundtable at every CoffeeCon we have. And I realize over the years, my cumulative effect is perhaps on 20 or 30,000 US so far consumers. But I guess the question for me is, how can we help? I think the thing that we can do most is all the people you represent are great and doing a great job. But the consumers that I meet, and I'm getting people that are real newbies, they're not even necessarily familiar with the term specialty coffee, because I keep my ticket prices low. I'm family friendly. I let kids in for free. The idea is to get everyone there to discover coffee as a cooking art, period, really. But one of the things that we're trying to do is get farmers to come there, because I'm absolutely convinced that a key to this, and Sonia, you brought it up, is that consumers need to understand the price they need to pay. And I'll tell you where they do understand that, I believe worldwide, is farm stands. And when people discover farmers markets, when they discover meeting farmers who grow their food, they read the menu from left to right from then on. They just look at what they want, and they want the person that they meet. They understand they're a person who has needs to feed their families, and that's all they care about. They don't even think as much of the product in a technical way anymore. They think of it in a very tactile and very emotional way. And I think that that's a key issue here, is to make sure that the farmer is engaged. And that's what we're trying to do. And I look to organizations like the SCA. One of the challenges I've had is, since the SCA is currently unfunded, you're not, in the US at least, you're not a partner with us as you were previously. And I would love to have that. I would love to encourage that, because we're a key to the consumers. And I loved going to the SCA show, but the SCA is, of course, not really a consumer show. But our show tries to bring that message. And I guess my question is for you: what can I do more to do that, to support you? That's it.
Thank you. Who wants to take that, or I can chime in a bit here? So thank you very much. And on the discussions we are having, we see that the consumer plays a role, and we need to talk to the consumer about the issue. It's been fundamental, though, through these discussions, that it's not about having a consumer paying a higher price for the cup of coffee to actually solve this problem. This is a much more complicated and, I would say, multidimensional problem, that it doesn't go just to the consumer to carry the burden to pay more for a cup of coffee, to actually have an impact to the livelihoods of many people that are affected by the price crisis that we're facing at the moment. And that has been obvious to the SCA and to the stakeholders, and that's why we initiated that price crisis response, because we were trying to map out the system to understand how we can make a fundamental change so that we can distribute that value throughout the value chain in a more equitable way. So I think that this is something that we as SCA is looking. We're trying to educate consumer, and going to Stuart's word, we're trying to communicate with consumers. At the moment, our focus has been mostly trying to understand and map out the current system. So I'll be happy to engage on a conversation with you if there is something that we can do together. But that's how we have been approaching the task at hand at the moment. I'm sorry to hijack the conversation here.
Thank you.
I think Stuart wanted to comment on this as well.
Yeah, I think it's great that you've been doing this. I mean, like, that's what we're all trying to do, is like spread our passion for coffee and get more people as passionate, or even a tenth as passionate as most of us are. It'd be a great world. So thank you for running a consumer fair and for being on this call and asking this question. One thing I saw at another coffee festival that was consumer facing, and I was involved in this partially, to be clear, was they ran a project where they engaged with an importer and sold coffee and used the proceeds of the sales to bring the farmer there. I think one easy thing you could do is, like, you know, put a surcharge on all of the stands, or maybe it's an option. So it's not even like every stand has to pay for it, but they can put in $20 extra or $50 extra, whatever it is. And the cumulative amount can be used to pay for a flight for someone, pay for a hotel for a producer to come out. And that way, you know, all of the festival can feel engaged with this, and it's shared, and it's part of the story of your event. But also, I think you're in a unique position where if 20, 30,000 people are coming, or whether it's 5,000 every year, and maybe I didn't understand, you know, that there's 5,000 people who are going to get a ticket, and the information you put on that ticket, you know, like how many hours on average go into producing a cup of coffee, how many cherries go into a cup of coffee. Some of these core facts will shock most consumers, and often most coffee professionals. And you do have that opportunity to just make a few tweaks to what you're doing to really spread that awareness. And then what the consumer wants to do with that knowledge is really their choice. But at least if you catch 5 people, then maybe that makes a difference. Maybe you catch 100, maybe 1,000, you know. So there's small things that you can do straight away. And I think if you refer to some of the SCA sustainability work, there's a lot of those facts and interesting information there that you could look at for this kind of work.
Thank you. We do already do some of that in our sustainability roundtable, and as well as I do a weekly video cast on Facebook and YouTube where we spread. We have interviews, and when we can, with growers, producers who, you know, share some things. But certainly those facts will help. And Yannis, I would certainly look forward to a further discussion with you. I love to work with the SCA. We endorse SCA standards. All our brewer manufacturers are the same manufacturers who all achieve SCA, and I've even tried to locate them together when I can get them to work together with each other. You know, I don't get I get a list of who I don't want to be next to, you know, at the show. So sometimes they're dead heat competitors, even though they're both certified, especially because they're both certified. So it's but working around things, logistic things like that. I'm hearing you and I'm taking notes.
Thank you
Perfect,
so much,
Kevin.
Thank you. We've got lots and lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to try to get to as many as we can in the next 6 minutes. So the next one we have, I think Stuart has already volunteered to address this first. So how does the relationship between specialty coffee and commercial or commodity coffee affect the price crisis? Is there collaboration to find solutions? Are there common goals we can work together to achieve? This is from Andy.
Yeah, so there's kind of a few things I wanted to step in. I'm sorry if I'm talking more than the other chairs. I know they have a lot of great thoughts as well. The connection is sometimes put to me like, why do we care about the commodity coffee price? Because surely we're buying something different. And I think a really simple thing to understand is that if the coffee market is $1, which is kind of where it is now, then if an importer or a roaster says, hey, I'm willing to spend $4 for this coffee, for a pound of this coffee, to be clear, which is about $8 for a kilo, then that's a big difference. And that makes a big difference. That makes a statement about how good that coffee is and how much the importer, the exporter, whatever it is willing to pay. If tomorrow the commodity price jumps to $4 somehow, then me saying, oh, I'm willing to offer $4 for this incredible specialty coffee is saying nothing, So we always have to benchmark what we're offering to people against this lower price. We always have to consider that, not because we want to offer less, it's because we want to make sure we're incentivizing producers and recognizing them, which means offering more than what they could otherwise receive. So that's for me the relationship, and that also is, and then directly with the price crisis, I've seen firsthand how the great thing about specialty is, as the price of commodity has fallen, a lot of importers, exporters, other people are fixing prices higher. They're keeping them where they were a year ago, 2 years ago, when the commodity price was higher to help support growers. So specialty coffee is making a difference. But importantly, another thing I didn't understand for a long time, but it makes perfect sense, is if you're producing coffee, not every single bag or every single tree is going to produce great coffee. So if you make 100 bags, maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 90 of those bags are going to be sold to the commodity market. So even if you're part of the specialty system, part of like this great network of roasters and technicians and baristas, you're still engaged with that commodity market. You're still going to have to sell some of your coffee at that price. So that's really important. Yeah, I don't know about common goals we can work together on this achievement, other than spreading this information, encouraging people to buy specialty coffee, because I genuinely do think it makes a difference, and encouraging understanding.
Great. This next question, I think, Hylan, perhaps you can start on this. This came in from Spencer. We know that green coffee prices are cyclical. When the green coffee futures market strengthens, green coffee will become more expensive in all qualities.
Can you repeat that, Ellie?
Yep.
Repeat the question. Sorry.
Yep. We know that green coffee prices are cyclical. When the green coffee futures market strengthens, green coffee will become more expensive in all qualities. This will move the price crisis downstream to roasters and retailers. How are members of the guilds preparing for the financial stress of increased cost of goods?
I think that we have to, the focus of, from what I'm historically from the focus of the price crisis has been the low price. I think we'd have to look at it as the SCA and say, what do we do when this turns around? And me and Yannis has had a couple of conversations about it. How do we address it when coffee becomes $4 a pound? Speaking to what Stuart says, I mean, historically, what I've seen is down the supply chain, unless you see a significant raise, it doesn't actually have that much of an effect on wages and cost of living on the supply chain. I mean, you look at where we're at now. We're at $1 a pound right now, and nobody at our levels making any more money. The rise will go to a certain extent, and then you'll start to see a cost rise. You'll see it in the producers rise. then you'll see it, the manufacturers will get more expensive, then you'll see that the importers will become more expensive, and it'll be a slow process, but then you'll see $6 lattes at some point.
Mhm.
So, but I think as all of our guilds, as we start to see that, we need to address it with the same impetus that we addressed the low price.
Thank
Yannis,
you,
can you
Hylan.
speak a little bit to that?
This is something that we don't know. We've seen how the market reacted historically when coffee prices went up. But it's not about an issue of the C market, I believe. Yes, prices will always go up and down. The C market, theoretically, the future market is there to reflect the supply and demand situation. The question is what systemic change we can do in order to reflect the need to get to price levels that support. I'm a big fan of that living income discussion that can support living income for people that they are involved throughout the supply chain. So it's not just how it will actually affect the financials of a part of the chain. I think we need to be seeing that throughout the chain systematically, and how that affects the whole environment.
Thank you.
I think, yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, we could keep talking about this, obviously, and there's so many questions we didn't get to. Kim and I will work with the team on getting these questions addressed and published in some way, anonymously. I'd like to just end on a final question. So this question came in from Alejandro, and he specifically asked if Yannis would answer this question, but I'd like to put it out to all four of you, actually. Do you believe we can progress more working as a community rather than working as individuals where all the voices along the supply chain matter? So Sonia, I think you kind of touched on this already. So maybe you would like to start, and just if we could hear from all four of you on this. So I'll read it one more time. Do you believe we can progress more working as a community rather than working as individuals where all the voices along the supply chain matter? And maybe try to 30 seconds or less for each of you because we're out of time.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's a great question, and I believe yes, we are stronger if we all work together on the value chain, the specialty coffee value chain. Definitely being more transparent in what we are doing and sharing information of what the things that we are doing to help out in our roasting communities. The guilds are obviously working together, and with the SCA, and absolutely, I think we should work together.
Stuart, do you have anything to add?
I have something.
Please go ahead. It was directed to you, so.
Sure, sorry.
Okay, yeah, all I was going to say is that yes, I believe as a community we're going to get a lot further than as individuals. However, never to forget the fact that every individual in the supply chain has power to make a difference. You know, the coffee you choose to drink today, who you choose to talk to about this issue, and how you choose to represent it will make a difference. So we should be empowered as individuals to make a difference as a community.
Go ahead, Yannis.
Sorry, Stuart, I jumped in and cut you off before. So what I wanted to say is it's the following, that SCA's purpose is to foster global coffee communities, to make coffee a more sustainable, thrivable, and equitable activity for the whole value chain. So it speaks exactly to the heart of who we are. We're about communities, and we believe that communities are the one that can make an impact to the whole value chain. So I think that that question speaks directly to our purpose.
Hylan, any final thoughts to add on that, and then we'll wrap up?
I like I said, I think yes, the communities can work together. Speaking to both what Stuart and Sonia touched upon, I think transparency is incredibly important. One thing about activism and trying to solve problems like this is it's easy to go in 7,000 directions. And I think the Guild's role is to decide what is the best message, what is the purpose of all that activism, and how do we find a solution, rather than all of our members saying, well, I'm going to fix this. What do we feel are the top 2, 3, 4, 5 things that we can lay out and say, if you address this as an activist and a supporter of our movement, this will help solve the problem.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the SCA, thank you to our panelists for this riveting discussion. We could probably keep going for another full hour, but we like to keep these webinars limited to an hour so we can stay focused. And especially thank you to the attendees who have joined today and participated in the discussion, and hopefully this was a valuable activity for you. Price crisis at sca.coffee. If you have any further questions, you can email us or visit through the website and submit questions that way. So again, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.